Pregnant wife sees billionaire husband and mistress together at a luxury spa and confronts them. A hush fell over the sunlit courtyard of the opulent Four Seasons Hotel spa as Sarah, 7 months pregnant, rounded the corner and caught sight of her billionaire husband with another woman. In that moment, the pampered crowd and soft harp music faded into distant noise. The force of betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak slammed into her like an avalanche. She had to blink twice to be sure. There he was, hand resting intimately on the back of an elegant stranger. But reality was undeniable. Everything Sarah thought she knew about their marriage had just been set ablaze, and only she could decide how it would end. Sarah had grown up in a modest household in suburban Illinois, the daughter of 2 hard-working parents whose idea of a big night out was sharing a bucket of fried chicken at a local diner. She had always dreamed of a life beyond the mundane, sparkling parties, glitzy events, and fairy tale romances straight out of the movies. When she met Andrew Fletcher, whose family name adorned commercial real estate buildings across multiple cities, it felt like she had been thrust into a dream. Andrew was no ordinary suitor. He was a real estate tycoon, an heir to a centuries-old European shipping fortune, and the founder of multiple tech startups in Silicon Valley. From the moment they first locked eyes at a charity gala in Chicago, Andrew seemed committed to sweeping Sarah off her feet. He invited her to elaborate dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. He flew her to exotic islands for weekend getaways. She gushed to her friends about him, their jaws dropping whenever she casually mentioned how he had arranged for a private musical performance in their living room, or how they dined in the Eiffel Tower with a personal chef at midnight. To the outside world, especially those who followed social media and the glitzy tabloids, Sarah had found her Prince Charming. She would stroll down red carpets with Andrew, wearing designer gowns she once could only admire in magazines. Their wedding was the social event of the year, held on the sprawling grounds of a centuries-old chateau in the French countryside. The guest list included heads of global corporations and a smattering of A-list celebrities. Pictures of Sarah in her custom-made Vera Wang wedding dress under a canopy of twinkling lights made the front page of every gossip column for weeks. Yet even in her state of what she wanted so desperately to believe was bliss, Sarah couldn't fully relax. It wasn't just the sudden shift from her humble upbringing to a world of unimaginable affluence that unsettled her. She would sometimes catch glimpses of Andrew's expression when he thought she wasn't looking steely, controlled, and calculating. Whenever the cameras were gone, a distant coldness crept over him. He was quick to hide it beneath a practiced, charming smile that could persuade a room full of venture capitalists to hand over millions. But in the privacy of their home, his eyes were distant and unfathomable, as though he was sifting through the next business calculation or, more troublingly, the next conquest. In those early years, Sarah brushed aside her misgivings, eager to believe in the fairy tale. She reminded herself that Andrew was a busy man under enormous pressure. Of course, he would occasionally seem withdrawn and curt. He was constantly working on new projects, and even his philanthropic endeavors were more ambitious than most. Still, a subtle disquiet lingered in the corners of her mind. She pushed it away by losing herself in her newfound lifestyle, managing high-end interior decorators, hosting lavish dinner parties, and becoming a fixture at runway shows in New York and Milan. After 2 years of marriage, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The news came on a crisp December morning, the test confirming what her body had been whispering for weeks. Initially, Andrew's reaction was beyond ecstatic. He picked her up, spun her around, and promised to slow down his whirlwind schedule to focus on family. Sarah believed him. His delight felt genuine. She resolved then and there to banish all doubts. They had a new adventure ahead. She was willing to do whatever it took to nurture not only her child, but also the fragile dreams of a marriage she deeply wanted to believe in. As her belly began to show, Andrew made a show of doting on Sarah in public. He escorted her to exclusive medical facilities, ensuring she had top-tier prenatal care. He insisted on a personal nutritionist and a yoga instructor specialized in prenatal exercises. Yet, as the pregnancy progressed, Sarah couldn't shake off a gnawing sense of loneliness. Andrew's nights grew longer. Business trips, supposedly essential, became more frequent. He'd return with untraceable receipts from lavish business dinners. Gifts, expensive jewelry, designer handbags, limited edition Hermes scarves arrived at the mansion with neatly typed notes, as though trying to placate her with objects rather than time. The memory of Andrew's face when he saw her wedding gown was enough to stifle her questions about odd charges on their credit cards. She told herself that after the baby was born, he'd return to being the man she hoped he was. However, beneath it all, her instincts stirred awake. Something was wrong. The illusions that once dazzled her were fading. In the 7th month of her pregnancy, Andrew brought up a spa getaway for her, claiming it would be good for her health and relaxation. The thought of a luxurious massage and some pampering sounded heavenly. She wasn't naive. Some part of her recognized this could simply be another ploy to distract her from deeper marital discontent. But at 7 months pregnant, Sarah needed every comfort she could get. She agreed and packed her suitcase, hoping that even if the spa trip was more about Andrew's appearances, it would offer a momentary escape from her swirling anxieties. Little did she know, the real confrontation of her life awaited her in the tranquil corridors of the Four Seasons exclusive spa wing. Sarah's arrival at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills was like stepping into a painting of timeless luxury. A grand chandelier greeted her in the marble foyer, sparkling as though it were made of stardust. Soft music drifted from hidden speakers, easing her frazzled nerves for a moment. Although Andrew was already there, he had arrived a day earlier under the guise of business obligations. Sarah still felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, hoping they could salvage some semblance of romance during these spa days. Her assigned suite was a testament to Andrew's wealth, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the palm-lined avenues, plush furniture in neutral tones, and a bathroom stocked with designer soaps. A bottle of non-alcoholic sparkling cider stood chilling on a table, accompanied by a bouquet of roses and a short note, "Take care of yourself, my love." It was Andrew's handwriting, but it felt too tidy, too impersonal, like the typed gift notes she'd received before. The next morning, Andrew was nowhere to be found in the suite when Sarah woke. Concerned, she tried calling his phone, which went directly to voicemail. She told herself he was likely taking a business call or meeting associates in one of the conference rooms. After breakfast, she decided to indulge in the spa's offerings, facials, gentle prenatal massages, and some time by the private pool. Let the tension slip away, she instructed herself. Let the warm waters soothe the rifts in her heart, but something gnawed at the edges of her mind. While flipping through a magazine in the spa lounge, she overheard two women discussing that billionaire with the new startup. They giggled about how exuberant his spending was, flying prospective clients to exotic resorts, hosting after-parties for business associates at posh nightclubs, the sort of extravagance that made you wonder if there was more behind the scenes. Sarah's ears pricked up. They were describing Andrew's most recent ventures, a solar power startup, a biomedical research firm, and a new real estate development in Las Vegas. The women continued gossiping, speculating on whether he was single. It wasn't the first time. Sarah had heard rumors about Andrew's questionable loyalty. She knew how tabloids loved to exploit the image of a handsome billionaire, swirling rumors around them like a persistent storm. But somehow, being pregnant and hearing the giggles of these strangers made her stomach knot. She felt a flicker of protective jealousy. She wanted Andrew to be hers, only hers. Hoping to quell her unease, Sarah immersed herself in a hydrating facial. She tried not to let her imagination run wild. If Andrew had been unfaithful, wouldn't she have discovered some evidence by now? Text messages, phone calls at odd hours, suspicious receipts from unexplained outings. She had asked her friend, a budding private investigator, to keep an eye on Andrew's social media presence, but it was heavily curated by his PR team. Nothing pointed to an affair, just speculation and a few harmless pictures with female colleagues at events. Mid-afternoon, Sarah finally glimpsed Andrew at the spa's organic juice bar. He was sipping a green smoothie and typing furiously on his phone. Relief washed over her. There he was, her husband. She took a step toward him, but her heart plummeted when she noticed a statuesque woman approach him. The woman's wavy auburn hair spilled elegantly over a silk blouse, and her posture radiated confidence. Andrew's smile was immediate and warm, more genuine than Sarah had seen from him in months. Clutching her robe, Sarah ducked behind a large decorative fern, guilt pricking at her for the act of spying. Still, she couldn't tear her gaze away. The woman leaned in close, too close, and whispered something to Andrew. He laughed softly, placing a hand on her upper arm in a gesture of familiarity. The little scene felt unbearably intimate, a silent intimacy that left Sarah with a chill in the pit of her stomach. She wanted to confront him right then, but she also felt paralyzed. Her rational mind insisted that this could be a business contact. Andrew was known for casual physical gestures, but her instincts, sharpened by months of growing suspicion, screamed that something was off. There was a glow in Andrew's eyes, a relaxed tenderness in his body language that Sarah had almost forgotten existed. Over the past months, Andrew had rarely reserved such warmth for her. Snatching her phone, Sarah snapped a photo, a grainy, zoomed-in shot of Andrew smiling at the woman by the juice bar. Then she crept away to her suite, heart pounding, tears threatening to escape. She stared at the photo repeatedly, searching for clues in their expressions. 1,000 scenarios competed in her head: a harmless meeting, an affair that had been going on for months, or a newly blossomed connection that might rip apart her marriage. As evening approached, Andrew finally returned to the suite. He greeted Sarah with a cursory kiss on the forehead, his phone still glued to his hand. When she asked about his day, he mumbled vague words about networking and getting deals done. His eyes never lifted from the flood of emails. Staring at his cold profile, Sarah felt the fabric of her life fraying strand by strand. In that quiet suite, with its luxurious decor and breathtaking city view, loneliness coiled around her heart like a thorny vine. Yet Sarah wasn't ready to confront Andrew immediately. She decided to wait, gather more concrete evidence, and choose her moment with care. If she was to accuse her husband, especially when pregnant with his child, she needed certainty. But inside, she trembled with the growing realization the man she'd believed was her partner, her forever, might already be lost to her. The following day, Sarah rose early, haunted by a restless night of swirling thoughts. She had dreamt that Andrew and the mysterious woman were laughing at her, mocking her for her naivete, even as she stood there, heavily pregnant, reaching out for him in vain. The fear that her dreams might be an echo of reality settled into her as soon as she opened her eyes. By mid-morning, Andrew was gone again, leaving behind only an empty coffee cup and a hastily scribbled note. Important meeting back soon. With a resigned sigh, Sarah made her way to the spa's lounge. Her plan was simple: stay vigilant, keep her eyes open, and see if there was any sign of Andrew's companion from the day before. Nestled on a plush sofa, she pretended to scroll through emails while discreetly observing the comings and goings. High-profile guests ambled in and out. The spa was rumored to cater to celebrities in discreet corners. She recognized a famous pop singer heading into a private massage suite, trailed by her entourage. A well-known Hollywood producer was sipping herbal tea while conducting a hushed phone call. Yet the woman Sarah had seen the day before was nowhere in sight. Feeling restless, Sarah decided to head to the hotel's boutique store, hoping the short walk through the grand corridor might clear her head. The corridor was lined with framed black and white photographs depicting the hotel's storied history, presidents, international royals, award-winning actors, a testament to the legacy and the exclusivity she'd become part of. "What am I doing here?" she asked herself under her breath, pressing a hand against her baby bump. The child within her stirred as though in response, grounding her in the moment. In the boutique, she browsed absent-mindedly. Designer dresses hung like sculptures, their price tags enough to make an average shopper cringe. A small section displayed baby clothing, cashmere blankets, embroidered onesies. Sarah's hand drifted over a delicate knitted cap. She thought about what her child's future would look like if her marriage unraveled. She would no longer be just Sarah the socialite. She would become a single mother, braving a world that idolized and scrutinized Andrew. A wave of panic briefly washed over her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Andrew: "I'll be at the outdoor pool around noon. Come join me." She glanced at the time, nearly 11:30. This was her chance to see if the meeting he had mentioned involved that other woman. Heart pounding, she returned the knitted cap to its place, promising herself she'd come back for it once she had some clarity on her future. At the outdoor pool, bright lounge chairs ringed crystal clear water, where a handful of guests were swimming leisurely. Andrew sat near a cluster of potted palms, dressed in swim trunks and a luxurious hotel robe, scanning his phone. Sarah approached quietly, unsure whether the woman might appear. But as she reached him, she was relieved and slightly disappointed to see he was alone. "Hey," she greeted softly. Andrew looked up, forcing a brief smile. "There you are. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." He set his phone aside and gestured for her to sit. Sarah sank into the lounge chair beside him, her hands resting on her belly. The warm California sun felt soothing, though her nerves sizzled with hidden tension. "You said you had a meeting," she said, gauging his response. "It ended early," Andrew replied, reaching to take her hand. His touch felt perfunctory, lacking the warmth she yearned for. "So, how are you feeling?" Sarah weighed her words. This was an opening to ask direct questions, but she hesitated, worried she might spook him into shutting down. Instead, she mentioned the spa treatments. She told him about the rumors floating around about him, half-jokingly, to see how he might respond. Andrew let out a short laugh. "Rumors are part of the territory, Sarah. You have to learn to tune them out. People see a man with money and assume all sorts of nonsense." An awkward silence followed. Sarah watched as Andrew's gaze drifted to his phone again. She cleared her throat. "There was a woman yesterday, tall, auburn hair, wearing a silk blouse. I saw her approach you at the juice bar. Who is she?" Andrew tensed for half a second. Had she not been watching so closely, she might have missed it. Then he loosened up, or at least pretended to. "Oh, that was Tara," he replied smoothly. "She's helping me with some negotiations in LA. A friend recommended her. She's on a contract basis, just business." Sarah scrutinized his face. "Right, she seems friendly." Andrew shrugged, adopting a casual tone. "She's good at what she does. We need all the help we can get to close the new deals." Nothing more. In that moment, Sarah felt torn. Part of her wanted to believe him. She had spent a long time forging a life together, and the baby deserved stability. Yet Andrew's explanation felt too neat, delivered with the precision of a salesman who knows exactly how to mask the truth. The tension between them hung heavy in the air, though Andrew seemed oblivious or unwilling to acknowledge it. Unable to confront him directly, Sarah retreated into her thoughts. She told herself that perhaps Tara was indeed just a business associate, and maybe her previous day's anxiety had amplified an innocent situation. But the sense of unease remained. Something about the way Andrew spoke about Tara so precisely, so matter-of-factly felt rehearsed. Later that evening, Sarah found Andrew in the lounge area of their suite, poring over documents. She noticed a file on the table, an NDA agreement for a consultant named Tara Westwood. Sarah's chest clenched. So that was the woman's name. An NDA usually signaled sensitive information, but there was a separate hush around it that unsettled her. If everything was above board, why was he leaving documents in plain view? Perhaps it was a show of transparency, or perhaps he assumed Sarah wouldn't probe deeper. She tried to read his expression again, but Andrew's face was as cool and guarded as ever. Part of her longed to break through that calm veneer and see if he felt any remorse, if there was a hint of guilt or compassion for her suspicions. However, his carefully composed mask remained intact. All she had was a name, a photograph on her phone, and her instinct, which told her that Andrew's story was incomplete. Sarah was determined to find the missing pieces, no matter how painful they might be. She would not be the last to know the truth about the man she had married and about the future of her growing family. A new day dawned with the kind of flawless weather Southern California was famous for. The spa's scheduled events included special prenatal yoga sessions, and Sarah decided to attend to steady her mind. The instructor guided the class under a canopy of palm trees, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of jasmine. Despite her inner turmoil, Sarah found fleeting moments of peace in the slow, deliberate poses and synchronized breathing. But her determination to uncover the truth never waned. After class, she slipped away to the spa cafe. She remembered from the day before that Andrew often stopped there for a post-workout smoothie. If he was indeed meeting Tara, perhaps she might catch another glimpse of them together. Sure enough, half an hour later, Andrew strolled in, greeted warmly by the staff who were accustomed to his heavy tips and friendly banter. He was alone at first, scanning the menu with bored familiarity. Sarah ducked behind a large menu stand, peering around the edge. She felt ridiculous, like a character in some soap opera, but her desperation was stronger than her pride. Tara joined him moments later. She wore a sophisticated sundress that flattered her tall, lithe frame, and she placed a light hand on Andrew's shoulder as she leaned in to say something. Andrew's smile mirrored hers, relaxed and genuine. They ordered drinks, what looked like green smoothies again, and proceeded to a corner table by the floor-to-ceiling window. Sarah inched closer, concealing herself behind a row of tall potted plants that lined the cafe's perimeter. It was impossible to hear everything they said, but she caught snippets. Andrew spoke about expanding the West Coast presence, while Tara mentioned onboarding the new partner. Their conversation seemed mostly business at first, but it gradually shifted, laden with more personal undertones. "I can't wait to show you that private villa," Sarah heard Tara say, flipping her hair over one shoulder. Andrew's expression lit up. "Maybe next week," he replied. "Just keep the communication under wraps until I get things sorted on my end." A wave of nausea washed over Sarah. She felt faint, her breath catching in her throat, as she realized that the private villa likely had nothing to do with a legitimate business meeting. She clenched her fists, anger and devastation warring within her. Tara leaned across the table, her grin wide and tempting, and Andrew brushed his fingertips against her wrist in a gesture of intimate familiarity. Heart pounding, Sarah pulled out her phone again, capturing a few surreptitious photos. This was more evidence, albeit still circumstantial, that there was more to Tara than a mere consultant. She wanted to march over and throw a glass of water in Andrew's face to demand answers. Yet she also feared making a public scene. The baby shifted uncomfortably within her, as if sensing her distress. After finishing their smoothies, Andrew and Tara stood, their stance close, their gazes locked in a silent exchange. Sarah retreated, slipping out through a side entrance into the wide corridor. Leaning against the wall, she pressed a trembling hand to her belly, fighting tears. Her world was crumbling, and she felt powerless, trapped in an expensive cage of her own illusions. That evening, once she had regained some composure, Sarah decided to search Andrew's suitcase. He was out allegedly meeting more investors for dinner. She told herself that normally, rummaging through your spouse's personal belongings would be a breach of trust. But her trust had already been shattered. She needed answers. Sure enough, buried beneath neatly folded shirts and expensive cufflinks, she found a small envelope bearing Tara's name. Inside were documents detailing some property acquisitions, but at the bottom was a note in Tara's handwriting, "I can't wait to have you all to myself again, T." The words were swirling with possibility, dripping with adultery. The final blow was a key card labeled Private Suite 409 West Wing. Sarah knew the Four Seasons West Wing held some of the hotel's most exclusive suites, used by celebrities who desired utmost seclusion. She began to tremble. This was no standard business negotiation. Andrew had gone through elaborate steps to hide something, and the note made it plain. It was an affair, an ongoing liaison. For a moment, Sarah felt like she was floating outside her own body. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and the room spun. She tried to ground herself by focusing on her reflection in the mirror, puffy eyes, parted lips, and a mixture of sorrow and rage. Her gaze drifted down to her round belly, where her unborn child grew day by day. She felt a surge of protective fury. She would not let Andrew's betrayal cast a shadow over the life of her baby. As her mind raced, she realized she had a choice. She could confront Andrew immediately, brandishing the note like a weapon, forcing him to spill the truth. Or she could slip into that suite herself, waiting to catch them in the act. The latter idea twisted her stomach into knots, but it would give her undeniable evidence, the kind that no amount of smooth words or legal intimidation could dismiss. In that moment, Sarah made her decision. She placed the key card back in the suitcase, making sure everything looked exactly as before. Then she carefully tucked the note into her pocket, forging a plan to uncover the truth once and for all. This was no longer about jealousy or petty suspicion. It was about justice for herself, for the baby, and for the vow Andrew had so carelessly broken. She would go to Suite 409 the next evening, armed with her phone's camera. If Andrew thought he could keep leading this double life without consequences, he was about to learn otherwise. The next day stretched out like a taut wire, each hour humming with tension. Sarah could hardly focus on anything else. She skipped her morning spa treatments, opting instead to stay in her room, rehearsing how she would handle the moment of truth. At lunch, she forced down a few bites of salad, her stomach a knot of nerves and dread. Andrew was characteristically absent, sending only a brief text, tied up with some urgent matters. Might be late back to the suite. The irony wasn't lost on her. He was definitely tied up, but not in the way he insinuated. Finally, as evening approached, Sarah slipped out of her room. She wore a simple black dress that concealed her baby bump somewhat, wanting to reduce any sympathy or notice from random onlookers. The corridor leading to the West Wing was quieter than the rest of the hotel, exuding an air of private exclusivity. Her heart hammered in her chest with each step, but she clung to the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Upon reaching Suite 409, she pressed her ear to the door, hearing nothing but the faint hum of air conditioning. She tried the key card. The lock clicked with a short green light. Sarah swallowed hard, pushing the door open ever so slightly. The suite beyond was dark, save for a small lamp in the corner. Two voices drifted from an adjacent room, Andrew's and Tara's. Sarah closed her eyes, steadying herself. Then she stepped inside quietly, creeping toward the source of the voices. Through a partially open door, she saw them, Andrew and Tara, standing by an ornate fireplace. Tara held a glass of wine. Andrew had an arm around her waist. They were locked in intimate conversation, oblivious to everything but each other. Even from that angle, Sarah could see enough to confirm the worst. Andrew tilted Tara's chin and leaned in to kiss her deeply, the kind of kiss that once belonged to Sarah alone. That was the final crack that shattered her composure. She switched on her phone's camera, capturing the embrace for a few seconds until the tremor in her hands became too strong. In that moment, Andrew spotted her through the sliver of open door. He pulled away from Tara, eyes widening in horror. "Sarah!" he gasped. Tara pivoted, nearly dropping her wine. Her face paled as she took in the sight of the pregnant wife standing there, phone in hand, eyes brimming with hurt and fury. A tense silence suffused the room. Time seemed to distort seconds, feeling like hours, as each of them weighed the gravity of the moment. Then Sarah stepped forward, voice trembling but resolute. "Andrew," she said, "how could you?" Andrew's mouth opened and shut, words failing him for perhaps the first time in his life. His carefully crafted facade crumbled in an instant. Tara set her wineglass down with a shaky hand, looking between Andrew and Sarah with a mix of defiance and fear. Sarah raised her phone, the camera still pointed at them. "Don't even try to talk your way out of this," she said, her voice quivering with raw emotion. "I've been suspecting for weeks, and now I have proof." Andrew looked as though he wanted to rush to her side, but Tara placed a hand on his arm, trying to anchor him. "Sarah, calm down," he started, voice laced with desperation. "It's not what it looks like, isn't it?" Sarah shot back, tears spilling down her cheeks. The betrayal cut deeper than she imagined possible. She had always feared there might be other women, but seeing it unfold in front of her was an entirely different kind of agony. Tara composed herself, stepping forward. "We didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said softly, her tone measured. "Andrew and I, we have feelings for each other. This wasn't just some fling." That admission felt like a knife to Sarah's heart. A fling might have been excused as a momentary lapse in judgment, but a deeper connection was more threatening. She tightened her grip on the phone, her breath coming in shallow bursts. "You have feelings for each other? And what about me, Andrew? What about our child?" Andrew's gaze flicked to Sarah's rounded belly, and a wave of regret crossed his face. "This has nothing to do with the baby," he insisted, awkward and unconvincing. Sarah let out a scornful laugh, half choked by sobs. "How can you even say that? The baby we created was supposed to be a commitment, a promise of our future. You've been lying to me, betraying us both." She threw the phone on the bed, the screen still showing a paused video of their incriminating kiss. "Congratulations, you've made me the fool," Sarah said. "You got what you wanted, someone new, someone exciting." Her words bristled with scorn, but her voice cracked under the weight of heartbreak. Andrew ran a hand through his hair, taking a shaky step toward her. "I never meant to hurt you," he murmured, reaching for her hand. "I was confused. Tara and I started working together, and it just happened." Tara looked stricken, but defiant. "You should have known something was wrong, Sarah. Andrew told me how distant you two have been." Rage boiled in Sarah's veins. "Distant? Because he was always gone. How do you even justify this?" She glared at Tara, then Andrew. "I was carrying your child while you cheated on me. Were you going to leave me, or pretend this never happened?" Andrew opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, a silent apology hung in the air, overshadowed by the magnitude of his betrayal. The baby kicked suddenly, a forceful reminder of the life inside her, of the precious bond so callously disregarded by the man who was supposed to protect them. Sarah pressed a hand to her abdomen, tears blurring her vision. She turned away, heading for the door. Andrew made a final, desperate plea. "Sarah, wait, we can figure this out. I'll stop everything with Tara, one just." But Sarah was done listening. She shot him a searing look of betrayal and condemnation. "You'll hear from my lawyer," she managed, her voice raw. "You chose your path the moment you invited another woman into our marriage." And with that, Sarah left the suite, her head held high in spite of the devastation coursing through her. She had finally confronted the truth, and Andrew had no defense for the wreckage he had unleashed on all their lives. Exiting that suite felt like stepping from a surreal film set into a harsh new reality. Sarah's legs felt unsteady as she navigated the hushed corridors of the West Wing, but she refused to stop until she reached her own suite. Once inside, she locked the door and slid to the floor, sobbing into her trembling hands. Betrayal was too gentle a word for what she felt. Rage and heartbreak warred within her, threatening to tear her apart. She had lost not just a husband, but also the belief that love could conquer all. In that moment, the child in her womb was her only anchor, reminding her to breathe, to remain alive and functional. The next hour passed in a haze. She called a car service, packed her belongings, and made arrangements to leave the Four Seasons. Part of her felt a pang of sadness. She'd hoped this spa trip might rekindle what had once been a tender bond with Andrew. Now it was the scene of her greatest humiliation. Before leaving, she penned a short note to Andrew, which she left on the nightstand. "Andrew, you stole from me the chance to believe in our future. Our baby deserves better than lies and deceit. I'm leaving before this poison seeps any further into my life." As she exited the suite, she thought about all the calls and social obligations looming ahead, apologies to family and friends, arrangements with lawyers, dealing with tabloids if the news broke. Andrew's fortune and status would undoubtedly complicate everything, but Sarah no longer cared. She was done pretending to be content in a marriage that had turned into a facade. The drive back to their estate was a blur, and upon arrival, the house felt eerily empty. She tiptoed into the plush living room, half expecting Andrew to walk in from another room, but of course, he wasn't there. She sank onto the velvet sofa, burying her face in the cushions. For a moment, she felt wholly alone, an abandoned figure in a silent mansion that once symbolized success and grand romance. But as the initial wave of despair receded, another emotion grew: determination. She was pregnant, vulnerable, yet strong in her own right. Andrew's money had given them a lavish lifestyle, but it was her grit and love that had held the relationship together until now. If Andrew couldn't honor their vows, she would forge a new path, one that prioritized her baby's well-being and her own self-respect. Within the next 2 days, Andrew bombarded her phone with calls and text messages. Some were full of remorse, others tinged with anger. He apologized profusely, claiming he had ended things with Tara. He argued that what they shared was just a mistake, or that it wasn't as serious as Sarah thought. And then, contradicting his own words, he accused her of invading his privacy, of making a scene that could irreparably damage his business reputation. Sarah didn't respond. She set up a meeting with a high-profile attorney, renowned for handling complex divorces involving celebrities and wealthy executives. The lawyer's office felt clinical, with immaculate glass walls and leather chairs. Sarah felt a flicker of insecurity. She knew little about the intricacies of high-stakes divorce law, but she stood firm, explaining her circumstances, her pregnancy, and the evidence she had. The attorney, Miss Patel, listened intently and nodded, expressing sympathy and confidence. "We'll file for separation immediately," she declared. "If he tries to intimidate you or bully you financially, we'll fight it. And rest assured, you have every right to seek child support, along with a fair settlement." Sarah felt a surge of relief. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had professional support, a team that knew how to navigate Andrew's cunning. At night, she received an unexpected email from Tara. It was short, a single line. "I'm sorry for how you found out, but Andrew and I are in love. We never meant to hurt you." Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief, anger surging anew. She typed a curt response, then deleted it. No words would rectify what Tara had done. A storm of media speculation began brewing. While Sarah had tried to keep the confrontation private, rumors that the pregnant wife of real estate magnate Andrew Fletcher left their spa hotel abruptly began to leak. Paparazzi started hovering near the estate, snapping photos of her whenever she left the house. Online tabloids speculated on the reason. Some guessed a complicated business meltdown. Others implied marital strife. A few braver publications hinted at an affair, though none named Tara specifically. Amid this chaos, Sarah often found herself staring at the nursery she'd been preparing. She ran a hand over the crib's smooth wood. The baby clothes she'd carefully folded in the dresser now felt like a painful reminder of the shattered dreams she once harbored. But she also felt a pang of fierce protection. This child would be loved, no matter how ugly the split with Andrew became. 3 days after the confrontation, Andrew showed up at the house. Sarah heard the commotion from the security guards, who had strict orders not to let him in without her permission. She peered through a window to see him standing at the gate, looking disheveled and contrite, begging for a chance to talk. For a moment, her heart faltered. Despite everything, she remembered falling in love with that man, the lavish gifts. Yes, but also the way his eyes lit up when talking about building something meaningful. But those were illusions, she reminded herself. He had betrayed her trust, risking their family's future for a selfish affair. The memory of him kissing Tara at the spa suite replayed in her mind. With renewed resolve, she stepped away from the window and instructed the guards to escort him off the property. Andrew's anger was palpable even from a distance. He shouted something about coming to his senses and fixing everything, but the gates remained closed. Sarah turned her back on him, tears threatening to return. For all the heartbreak, she realized she had crossed a threshold. She was no longer the wide-eyed bride consumed by illusions of grandeur and happiness. She was a betrayed woman, finding her own strength, standing on her own terms, ready to protect her child against the man who had put his desires above his family. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. A rare Los Angeles storm was brewing, nature's reflection of Sarah's own emotional turmoil. She wondered if Andrew felt the crackle in the air, the storm about to unleash its full fury. If so, she hoped he understood there would be no going back. The storm arrived overnight in a dramatic downpour, cleansing the city's smog-ridden skies. By morning, the world seemed washed anew, but Sarah's personal tempest was far from over. She woke to a flurry of text messages from friends and acquaintances, some concerned, others prying for juicy details. But one message stood out, a short, cryptic text from an unknown number. "Be prepared for everything to change." Initially, she brushed it off as a hoax or a misguided attempt to meddle in her affairs. However, as she scrolled through her social media feed, a breaking story caught her attention. A major scandal had erupted involving Andrew's flagship real estate project, allegations of bribery, under-the-table deals, and fraudulent zoning permits. Multiple news outlets were reporting that the FBI was investigating. Sarah's heart lurched. She had known Andrew's business dealings were aggressive, but she never suspected him of outright illegal activities. She read through article after article, each new piece of information more damning than the last. Sources claimed Andrew had used shell companies to pay off local officials, ensuring his developments bypassed environmental regulations. Within hours, Andrew's smiling face was splashed across every major financial news website under ominous headlines. Anonymous sources close to the investigation hinted that his entire empire might collapse if the allegations proved true. Sarah's phone buzzed incessantly, calls from reporters, messages from ex-colleagues, all seeking comment. She turned the device off, overwhelmed. Despite her anger and heartbreak, Sarah felt a pang of worry. If Andrew was indicted, what would that mean for her child? She could handle life without Andrew's extravagant wealth, but she worried about legal ramifications. Would his assets be frozen? Would she be dragged into court to testify? Anxiety clenched her throat, and she paced the living room, mind churning through worst-case scenarios. By mid-afternoon, Miss Patel, her lawyer, called. "Sarah, I just received word that Andrew's assets might be placed under a temporary freeze. This could complicate spousal and child support," she explained in a measured tone. Sarah sank onto the couch. "So what do we do?" she asked, voice wavering. "We'll file a request for an emergency hearing," Miss Patel assured her. "We can argue that your prenatal and living expenses need to be secured, especially given Andrew's uncertain legal status. Stay calm. Let me handle it." "All right," Sarah said, though staying calm seemed impossible. In the days that followed, details of Andrew's alleged corruption became more lurid. Whistleblowers emerged, including a former accountant of his, who claimed to have doctored financial statements at Andrew's behest. The FBI carried out a search of Andrew's main offices, carting away boxes of documents. Karma, it seemed, had come knocking on Andrew's gilded door with a vengeance. And Sarah, despite her heartbreak, recognized that the seeds of his downfall were sown long ago. Though Andrew tried to contact her repeatedly, voicemails, emails, sending messages through mutual acquaintances, Sarah maintained her silence. She heard through the grapevine that Tara was also under scrutiny. Rumor had it she was more than just a consultant. Allegedly, she played a role in connecting Andrew with corrupt officials, possibly acting as a liaison or even a co-conspirator. Amid this chaos, Sarah found a strange sense of vindication. Andrew's deception had extended far beyond their marriage vows, encompassing every facet of his life, his business, his finances, his relationships. The notion that his empire was crumbling felt oddly fitting. He had built a castle on quicksand, and now, with one major investigation, it was sinking. Still, Sarah grappled with conflicting emotions. She took no pleasure in seeing Andrew's downfall. She worried how all this stress might affect her unborn baby. She sat quietly in the nursery some mornings, rubbing her belly and whispering soothing words to the child inside. No matter how bleak her future seemed, she wanted her child to feel loved and secure. In the midst of this turmoil, an unexpected visitor arrived, one of Andrew's younger cousins, Marcus. He was a quiet man with gentle eyes and an honest demeanor, worlds apart from Andrew's flashy confidence. He asked if he could speak with Sarah privately. Reluctant but curious, she invited him into the living room. Marcus sighed heavily, settling into a chair. "Sarah, I'm sorry about everything that's happened. I don't have all the details, but I know Andrew's in deep trouble. I also know you're expecting soon." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Look, if you need financial support or even just help around the house, I'm willing to assist. Our family isn't perfect, but you've always been kind to me." Sarah felt tears welling up. She had never been especially close to Marcus, but his sincerity touched her heart. "That's very generous," she replied quietly, "but I'm sorting out the legal aspect with Miss Patel. I appreciate you reaching out." Marcus leaned forward, compassion in his gaze. Andrew had it all, but he let greed and ambition consume him. "My parents warned him time and time again, but he didn't listen. Now, it's come to this." Sarah nodded, recalling the times Andrew would boast about his business achievements, ignoring any ethical lines. He wouldn't slow down, she said softly, and he lost himself in the process. Marcus left after a brief visit, but his words lingered. He lost himself. Yes, Andrew had lost himself, and in doing so, had lost her too. The scandal he found himself mired in was a cosmic reckoning, the universe demanding payment for all the corners he'd cut, all the hearts he'd broken. And Sarah realized that while she couldn't rejoice in his misery, she couldn't shield him from it either. He had sown these seeds, now he had to reap the harvest. As the days dragged on, Sarah wondered about Tara. Had she abandoned Andrew in his hour of need? Or was she still at his side, entangled in the scandal? The tabloids had started digging into Tara's background, publishing speculation about her involvement in shady deals. Sarah kept her distance from those stories, focusing on her own path. She had an unborn child, a future to secure, and a life to rebuild from the ashes of Andrew's downfall. The tide of karma had swept Andrew away in a deluge of disgrace. Yet in that ruin, Sarah saw a glimmer of light. Freed from the shackles of a dishonest marriage, she had a chance to cultivate a life of authenticity and love, one that might finally mend her wounded heart and offer a stable foundation for her child. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, doctors' appointments, and emotional upheaval. Sarah spent her mornings with Miss Patel, navigating the labyrinthine path of divorce settlements, asset protection, and attempts to shield her child from the fallout of Andrew's downfall. The world now knew that Andrew's empire teetered on the edge of collapse. Furious investors filed lawsuits, and the banks threatened foreclosure on some of his major properties. Allegations poured in from former employees and business partners, painting a damning picture of Andrew's practice of blending personal and corporate funds to fund lavish lifestyles and hush up questionable dealings. Overnight, the once revered mogul found himself facing potential criminal charges. Sarah's phone rang one afternoon. The voice on the other end belonged to Andrew's personal attorney, who asked if Sarah would be willing to meet with Andrew for a private conversation, no lawyers, no paparazzi. Initially, her immediate response was to refuse. Why put herself through more stress? But a fleeting thought of closure and the need for him to face the consequences of his choices pushed her to reconsider. They arranged to meet at a quiet restaurant in Malibu. Sarah arrived early, feeling a swell of anxiety as she stepped into the tasteful, secluded dining area reserved for VIPs. The hostess led her to a booth shielded by curtains, giving them an air of privacy. She ordered a glass of sparkling water, her hands trembling as she waited. Andrew walked in a few minutes later. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, his posture noticeably slumped. Gone was the brash confidence that once drew people to him like moths to a flame. He offered Sarah a tentative nod and sank into the seat across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Sarah quietly studied him, searching for any shred of the man she once loved. Andrew finally broke the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." His voice was gravelly, fatigued. She said nothing, waiting. He exhaled, eyes downcast. "I know sorry isn't enough," he began. "I made terrible choices. With Tara, in my business dealings, all of it. I never intended for things to spiral this far, but I'm the only one to blame." Sarah swallowed the knot in her throat. She considered launching into a tirade but held back. "Why did you do it, Andrew? Was our marriage never enough for you?" He winced, his eyes flickering with shame. "I cared for you. I still do. It's just after I tasted a certain level of success, I became obsessed with wanting more. More money, more power, more excitement." He hesitated, gaze darting around the table. "Even more affection, if I'm being honest. And Tara was there offering me a thrill, a way to escape the stress of everything. One small step in the wrong direction led to the next, and before I knew it, I was in too deep." Sarah's heart clenched. She remembered the early days of their relationship, filled with genuine warmth and excitement. "You had everything you ever needed," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes, "but you threw it away." Andrew lowered his head. "I know," he said. "I accept the consequences. My attorney says I could be looking at serious charges, maybe even prison time, and the company. God, Sarah, it's all imploding. I might lose everything." The bitterness in her heart was evident, but a flicker of compassion broke through. "You lost more than money or status, Andrew. You lost a family. You lost the right to watch your child grow up without a sea of guilt shadowing you." He tried to reach for her hand. She withdrew instinctively. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, voice cracking. "But I'm asking for your help. My attorneys are doing what they can. If you could just speak out and say that some of these allegations about me misappropriating your funds aren't true, maybe it could mitigate the charges. The press is painting a picture that I used you as a front for illicit transfers." Sarah felt a surge of anger. "I knew nothing about your financial crimes, Andrew. You never once asked my permission or even informed me of these shady deals. So don't expect me to lie for you now." He bowed his head in defeat, tears glistening in his eyes. "I understand," he murmured. "I'm sorry, truly sorry." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of distant ocean waves filtering into the subdued hush of the restaurant. Finally, Sarah broke the stalemate. "I won't stand in the way of the truth, but if anyone asks, I'll tell them exactly what I know, that you acted alone, without my knowledge or consent. I won't lie to protect you." Andrew nodded slowly, resignation settling across his features. "That's fair," he admitted. "I just hope our child doesn't grow up hating me." Sarah's throat constricted. "I won't speak ill of you to our child," she said, surprising even herself with the sincerity in her words. "But you have to earn any place you want in his or her life. This isn't about me anymore. It's about protecting an innocent child from your recklessness." Andrew lowered his gaze, tears now rolling freely down his cheeks. "I'll do whatever it takes to make amends," he whispered. Sarah stood, feeling the weight of finality pressing upon her. "Some mistakes can't be undone," she said gently. "Good luck, Andrew. I hope you find a way to become a better man for yourself and for the future." As she walked away, she felt a sense of both sorrow and relief. There were no more illusions. She saw Andrew for who he truly was, broken and remorseful, but also responsible for the tangled mess that had crushed their marriage. She wouldn't let him drag her down with him. Stepping out into the sunlit parking lot, she inhaled the salty breeze. She placed a hand on her baby bump. The path ahead was uncertain, strewn with legal complexities and emotional scars. But with each step she felt a glimmer of resolve. She could and would rise from the ashes of Andrew's betrayal, forging a life unburdened by deceit, ready to welcome her child into a world shaped by honesty and self-respect. Through heartbreak, betrayal, and a storm of secrets, Sarah found the inner strength to stand her ground. She refused to let Andrew's deceit define her or her unborn child's future. In the end, the opulence and power that once glittered around her husband crumbled under the weight of his own reckless ambition. As Sarah looked toward the horizon without illusions, but with hope, she realized this was more than just an ending. It was the start of a life lived on her own terms, free from the corruption that once lurked behind every promise of luxury. If this roller coaster of emotions, high-stakes betrayal, and ultimate redemption left you breathless, don't let the journey end here. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that resilience can conquer any adversity, and subscribe for more stories that will keep your heart pounding and your spirit inspired. Your support makes all the difference.